The fact that your web application is working on your machine doesn't necessarily mean that it will work on the server. In the end, after that you've finished working on your project, you are looking to deploy it somewhere. Your web application requires to have Python installed and all kind of libraries in order to function properly, but no one can guarantee that the server will have all those dependencies. We can use Docker in order to store our web application inside of a container, and this container will contain all what the application needs in order to run. So as you can see here we have our code, we have a to-do list API, and I am going to Dockerize it via Docker, and then by the fact that our code is going to be inside of a container, it will allow us to run it everywhere without worrying about dependencies and more. This project is quite the same as before, but this time we are using environment variables in order to declare our connection details. Here, as you can see, we have host docker internal. It allows us to communicate with the host IP. I am the host, which is hosting the Docker containers. It allows them to connect to my IP in order to initialize a connection to Postgres. And here we have the rest of the credentials. Docker container has its own kind of network, and that's why I cannot specify localhost. If I will specify localhost, it will refer to localhost inside of the container and not to my localhost. That's why we should write host docker internal. Okay, let's take a look at the other files. Here we have the requirements.txt file. Here we specify all the libraries our container should use in order to function properly. And let's move to the Dockerfile. Here we have our table, of course. Okay, and this thing is a based image. You can imagine it as a small Linux server where we will host our application. This image gives us a good server which is truly optimized for Python. It is a small Linux server, you can imagine it as is, and this line represents our working directory within the server. All of our files will start in the app directory, which is this. Then we have this file which will copy our requirements.txt file under this directory, and it will create a same file with the same name, and then we will download all the dependencies from this file, and then we have the copy here. It will copy all the files on the left to our destination folder, which is our work directory. Here we are writing expose 5000 only for documentation purposes, and after that we will run our web application. In this function we are using our environment variables, of course. And now let's try to run it. We can do docker build and we will give it a name. Let's give our image a specific name. We will call it backend, and I will specify the dot. This makes Docker look for a Dockerfile, and we can run it. Let's wait for it to build the image. It was quite quick. We can do Docker images in order to display all the images. I will increase the screen a bit. Okay, and now let's try to run it. Docker run. Let's map ports. We map the inner port from our container to our port, which is 5000, so then we can access it. And let's specify the name of the image. We can specify the image ID and let's press enter. Okay, and now I will try to access any of our API endpoints. And as you can see here, we have our data. And it means that we were able to launch our web application inside of a Docker container, which contains all the dependencies it needs to run. It means that now I can deploy it anywhere in the world and it will work as expected, without me having to worry about setting up the dependencies on the server and more. Sometimes we might want to store our Docker files in a repository, which we can access from other computers as well. That's why it might be a good idea to use Docker Hub in order to store our Docker images. And now I am going to show you how to do it. I would love to start from zero, so that's why I have a new project here. And as you can see, it is just a simple API endpoint which returns hello world. And now let's go over the Dockerfile. As you can see here, we have our Dockerfile. And here we list all the dependencies. The only dependency which we have is Flask. And let's start Dockerizing our project. I can do docker build and give it a tag name. I will call it hello world endpoint. Quite a long name. And let's wait for it to finish. Okay, it was quite quick. Now let's list all the Docker images. And let's try to run our Docker image just for testing so that we can see if everything is working correctly. I can do docker run and map ports, of course. And let's specify the Docker image ID. And as you can see, here we have our endpoint as well. And now let's create a repository which will contain our Docker image so that then we can access it from any computer we want. I will call it Python hello world. Our repository will store our Docker image, and then we can pull the image from anywhere we want. But the first step is to upload our image into this repository. So let's do it. We can go to VS Code and let's display our image. We can do Docker images and we should give it a tag. So I can do Docker tag and specify our repository. I will give it an initial tag of v1 since this is the first upload we are doing. Whenever we upgrade our image, we should also upgrade the tag name. So in the next upload, I will call it v2. It is good because that it allows us to keep control over all the upgrades. Okay, and now we should do Docker images. And we should write this Docker push and specify this. Of course, it's not enough. We should include our tag, which is v1. And now let's try to execute this command. We can wait for it to load. Okay, let's take a look at Docker Hub. And as you can see, here we have our new image. So it seems like everything is working correctly. And now I will show you how to pull this image. Let's say that now I am from another computer and I want to use this image. So let's do it. I will pull it now from this repository. First of all, I will clean all the old images. So I can do Docker images and I will clean them. Let's delete all of them. Okay, I will clean the terminal as well. And now in order to pull this Docker image, we should specify this command, docker pull, and specify the image name and the tag name. We can press on this and copy this value. And now it will pull it directly to our computer. Let's display it. And let's try to run it now. Docker run. I will specify the image ID. And of course, I should map the ports. And here we have the same output as before. And whenever you want to pull a certain image, please mention all the value. You should mention the repository name along with the image name and its tag. So you should mention everything. You can save your Docker image inside of a USB, for example, so then you can later go and transfer it to another PC. In order to do it, we should first take a look at our images, and then we can do the following command, docker save, and we should specify this flag, which stands for output. We can call it whatever we want, but we should end it with an extension which is .tar. And then we should specify our image name along with its tag. Let's wait for it. Okay, seems quite good. I will remove the old image so that I can show you how to load it from our backend.tar file, docker rmi, and let's specify the image ID in order to remove it. Okay, let's verify it. And now we don't have any images left. And in order to load it, in order to actually use this Docker image, we can do docker load and specify the I flag, which stands for image, and specify the file name, which is backend.tar. Let's wait for it to load as well. And we can do docker images. And as you can see, here we have our image.